Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you're enjoying this show, you know what to do. Leave us that rating and review. We want to hear from you. We want to know why you like this show, and we want to learn what we can do to make you work harder for your investing goals. And if this is your first time listening, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great one today. We're going to be talking to Leslie Ann Morris. Leslie Ann Morris is originally from California and began her Smoky Mountains investing journey while living and working out of Los Angeles. Now, Leslie had been a commercial banker for over 20 years and wanted to begin building true wealth. Now, her mission is to be a driving force that helps empower women to begin investing. And her ultimate goal is to create 1,000 women millionaires through real estate investing. Let's welcome to the show, Leslie Ann Morris.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, John.
Absolutely. Hey, Leslie, I went over your bio at a very, very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Sure. Well, yeah, I was living in LA, California girl. Just looking at CEO salaries. I was in banking at the time and just thought, I'm never going to go from the rung that I'm at to where the CEO's level of pay is. I think it was 16 million all in. And I said, no. What's a hack? What's a shortcut to get there? And at the time I was in commercial real estate lending. So I do have a really strong lending background. Did that for 20 years. And so just naturally kind of gravitated towards becoming a real estate investor. I had a lot of mentors in my junior years telling me that's how 90% of all millionaires are created is through the real estate vehicle. So I started working on a master's degree at the University of Southern California. And as I began that journey, I began my real estate investing journey. I just found a fun niche, which is short-term rentals. And there's like a lot more to that story of kind of how I got to it. But the gist of it is it just seemed like a fun way to have a property that not only I could use, but could give others a travel experience through real estate investing. And once I got to like 5, I have cabins in the Smoky Mountains in Eastern Tennessee. I then created a couple of other companies that came out of my portfolio and ended up leaving my W-2 job with the bank just this past September. So it's a very exciting time for me.
I love it. Well, listen, congratulations on making that transition from your W-2 job to being a full-time real estate investor. You mentioned that you kind of got going with the short-term rentals in the Smoky Mountains, and it was kind of an interesting way to get started. I'm very curious. When did you actually get started? And talk to us a little bit more about getting going in short-term rentals.
Yeah, sure. It was 2019. And it was like the summer of 2019. I actually was looking at buying just a single family long-term rental. Actually in Ohio, I was looking at distressed markets where I could just pay cash and just have something I didn't have to stress out about month to month. Although being a lender, I do like to use other people's money and use the leverage aspect. And so that Ohio deal actually like blew up overnight. The guy just decided he wasn't going to sell his house. And my agent said, do you want to get a lawyer? What do you want to do? You have options. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go back to the drawing board. And I had found a report that Airbnb puts out annually, just by doing some Google searching, different terms like how to find something cash, where's price per square foot low. And I came upon the Smoky Mountain market because out of their top 5 markets for the prior year, 3 of those were all in Eastern Tennessee in a very small area by the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So then I started doing some due diligence on that market, what that looked like, what were occupancy rates, how much of a headache would it be to be managing out of state? And it seemed like it was extremely doable. So I just went on Zillow and found the first property I actually ended up buying. I've pretty much found all of them that way, but even though I'm an agent now, I still do that. But yeah, and I just bought one and it performed straight out of the gate, started making pretty good money. And then I just quickly bought more and more and more and more.
I love it. So you just went on Zillow, found one for sale and said, sure, I'll take this one.
Yeah, today I'm very active in the Bigger Pockets community. I do try to put out a lot of education pieces on that platform and have a lot of friends that are kind of tied into that network. And I just kind of went on there and built out like a team, just my initial team of like, lender, agent, people that were active that I could easily get a hold of, that were, I could find them and they wanted to, help other people out that were out of state. And that's kind of my entire business is built off of seeing gaps in that process.
I love it. And you just gave a really powerful insight. So I want to make sure people found that and understood what you said. You use bigger pockets. You are active. You are giving value. You're educating people. But you initially use that to identify and build your team. And if you're investing in an out-of-state market, you have to have strong boots on the ground. And that's exactly what you did. And I'm very curious if you were, taking the same approach when you were looking at that property in Ohio, because I think a lot of the time when you talk to people who invest out of state, one of the mistakes they make is just not having the right team in place. So, talk to us a little bit more about kind of how you went about building that team. Did you ask specific questions or did you get referrals? Like, talk to us a little bit more about how you built that team living, in California while you were investing in the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't even remember. I think the Ohio agent was just somebody listed on Zillow at that time. I don't think I was in bigger pockets. But when I started to do more research about, owning and operating a short-term rental, since it's like a little mini hotel, that looked different on like a scalable like capacity. And so the team needed to be a lot more than just like an agent and a lender. It needed to have handyman, cleaner, boots on the ground, people that I could really trust and rely on until, I either flew out here or whatever. At the time I didn't know I was going to end up moving to Tennessee. That happened very fast. But yeah, I just, it wasn't really referrals. I kind of just looked at some of the folks that were active on there and who they'd been using and kind of just went that route. Fast forward to today, I'm a premier agent for Bigger Pockets. So I do pay for leads through there, but I also write a blog. And to your point about building a team out of state, I do have a recent blog post that's like a very short, maybe 3-minute read on there that folks can find. That just talks about, who's that team and how do you find that team? But it's truly important because if you physically can't be there, you need to have people you can truly trust.
No, that's great insights. And I think it's really important for people to understand that and take that to heart. And also, just because you find somebody who is a contractor in the market that you're looking at, that doesn't mean they're great. Even when you get referrals, things change, people change, maybe they take on too much work, maybe COVID hits, whatever. So just make sure you go through your due diligence and, find the right people to help you grow. And you always want to be looking for key team members as well. We'll try to link to that blog post as well. I think that's a great resource for people to check out. Talk to us about kind of the portfolio today. Where do you sit? I know that the Smoky Mountains is kind of your foray. You've now moved into that area, or at least into Tennessee. Tell me about kind of the current portfolio.
Yeah, right now I have 10 short-term rentals that are all in Eastern Tennessee. 2 of those are houses and 8 of them are cabins. The 2 houses were tests for me that I'm probably going to be selling next year. I'll do probably 1031 exchange out of those. And then I'm buying one that I will close on just in the next couple of weeks. And then I'm also just getting ready to break ground on a build there, which will also be a cabin. And just as the deals present themselves, I'm looking at an off-market deal right now that could turn into something really great for next year. So I'm always building that market, I think, because I've made it so that I can 10x or 100x what I'm doing just by having like a team that supports me now in the businesses that I own and run. It's plug and play at this point.
No, I love that you're able to scale that. And it looks like you've got kind of the engine and the machine moving in the right direction for you to go out there and build and acquire properties at a more scale. As you do that, obviously capital is the thing that I think slows some people down. And you've kind of invited people to join you and kind of participate in some of this opportunity as well. Talk about that.
Yeah, it's not a syndication. I get asked about that an awful lot. I know there are folks in the short-term rental industry, not Smoky Mountain specific, that are doing some syndications. That's something I could look at in the future. But right now, what I've done is, because I'm licensed as an agent and a property manager, created a way where, you come in with your own, you're going to buy the real estate and own it. But from, like I'm saying, cradle to grave can help you facilitate not just the purchase, but setting things up and managing it month to month. So literally people are going to be completely passive in it. I think there's been a big movement around short-term rentals. Airbnb is becoming the next, Uber, if you will. There's other companies doing rideshare, but it as Uber. Like, that's just how it's been. And so it's drawn all these investors in, and everybody, naively thinks that self-management is this very easy thing you can do. And it is so much work. I mean, way more than managing, if you have a single family long-term tenant, this is going to be 1,000 times more work. You've got 8 7 to 8 turns a month. So 7 to 8 tenants per property per month. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to help folks that, maybe they don't want to quit their job, or maybe they want to start building retirement nest egg to get a way that they can get in that's not, going to ruin their quality of life, I guess. That's what I've
Yes.
done.
Sounds like kind of a really turnkey short-term rental investing, right? So you're kind of identifying the property, making sure that you kind of help take on the management. And then are you helping to furnish it and make sure everything is there as well?
Yeah, we can help with that. We have physically done that, my company, and we're not really set up to do that. But on small scale stuff, we can. But there are third party companies located in the Smoky Mountains. That's all they do. So we can refer. We have vendors. We can plug and play into wherever we need. Depending on what we need. Like if it needs a hot tub, which is like a very common amenity out here. Guests that are looking for cabins in the Smokies are looking for hot tubs. So if you don't have one, you really need to add one. So we have vendors that we can plug in to do that for us.
There you go. And I think the thing that you said was really insightful is that if you are doing this to get some passive income, you're investing, you want to make money, you're not necessarily looking to quit your job right away or make this kind of a part-time job, then investing with this model, right, this turnkey approach, it could be a wise way for you to get into the game because you have a team in place, the boots on the ground we kind of just talked about, where they can take care of a lot of the day-to-day elements and you can focus on getting that passive income. Talk to us about that person who feels they need to control it all, doesn't really have the team in place. What are some of the issues or mistakes that you're seeing investors make from that standpoint?
Yeah, there's a ton. I mean, we saw like a wave of new investors come into the market with like, the dollar signs in their eyes. And I think the biggest thing is, like I said, the amount of time it's going to take to self-manage. So what was happening when they did their, underwriting of purchasing the property, if they even did underwriting, they did not have a line item for like a property management expense because they were going to be self-managing. So then now what we're seeing is when they say, oh, I'm sick of taking a phone call at 11 p.m., 2 a.m., whatever, people can't find the TV remote, that gets aggravating after a while. If your headspace is not in like the hospitality sector, it can be grating for you. And you need to respond right away because you're helping somebody on their vacation. They can't, it's not like, oh, we'll fix your toilet in a couple hours. It's like they need something right now. So now that they've, realized that this is this headache and they go back to say, okay, I'm going to plug in a property manager so I can, become passive in the business. Well, now they're in the red, they're underwater, they can't make their mortgage or whatever, it's upside down, they're not making money, and then they're listing them to sell. So I've unfortunately seen quite a bit of that. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just the misnomer that it's going to be so easy. As long as you do your due diligence on your underwriting and you keep some sort of line item for property management, it's costs in the Smoky Mountains for property management could be anywhere from like 20 to 40%. So you need to interview property managers. You need to be asking, what they charge, how they charge that way. We do like relationship custom-based pricing. So we don't have just like a flat rate, which, we're able to help a lot of people that get into a sticky situation get out of it. That's not always the case, but that's kind of what I've seen. And then on the other side, if somebody is happily self-managing, which I have a lot of, in my network, there's a lot of folks that do that. And, they just know in their mind how much work it's going to be. And they, just some of the like little mistakes would be just like not firing fast enough. I think that was some good choices I made in the beginning. I almost turned over 100% of my team before I moved to Tennessee, just because, I didn't like communication or maybe the place wasn't getting as clean as it needed to be. So just like turning over that team quickly so that, just don't let people mess up so many times before you fix the problem,
I think that's another great insight because a lot of times we talk about, again, we talked about getting the boots on the ground and building a team and using, bigger pockets to help identify that. But just like any other business, someone can look great on paper, they can interview well, they can, have a great resume. But once you get into it, you have to understand whether or not the culture is going to be a fit. Do they really understand the way you want to work, the way you want to operate? And if not, you have to make sure that you are continuing to evaluate these people and the team members and making the adjustments. And that's a really important thing because a lot of times people are slow to fire. And I think it's important to identify what the issue is. Sometimes the issue is maybe you're not conveying, clearly what the expectations are. So they think they're doing something right. And it doesn't match really what your expectations are. You talked about the hospitality space, right? That hospitality mindset is very different than, owning maybe C-class apartments where you're really trying to keep costs down, right? You're trying to keep those expenses down. So maybe you're not, replacing everything right away, or when there's a call, you're making sure that something's actually broke. You're trying to fix it a couple times first. So I think some of those things really come into play, because in the hospitality space, you're right. These people are on either vacation or, it's something where there's a vision, there's a goal of what this is meant to be. I only get X amount of days off a year. I've taken my time to come to the Smoky Mountains with my family or my friends, and I want to relax. I want to enjoy this, and I need this home, this temporary home, to give me that ability. And if you can't provide that, that's going to really negatively impact somebody's experience, and it's going to hurt your business overall. So that mindset, I think, is really, really important when you're thinking about who are your team members. Are they approaching it with that same lens of hospitality, take care of the guests, make sure they have a great experience? Are we doing everything we can to really elevate the experience they have while they're taking this time to spend at our location? So just, again, different mindset there than it takes maybe with regular apartments. And with that in mind, for someone who is thinking about investing in short-term rentals, and maybe their experience to this point has only been with rentals, single family rentals or even multifamily apartment rentals, what are some of those differences that they need to keep in mind before investing in short-term rentals?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing straight out of the gate is that your underwriting is going to have a lot of other metrics for your month-to-month operating expenses. I guess unless you have like a big multifamily where you're paying utilities and garbage and stuff, but you've got to make sure that it's beautifully decorated. You've got to make sure you have, high-speed internet, smart TVs. I mean, there's been a lot of cabins I bought that were just someone's like second vacation home. They weren't rentals, so their TVs are garbage. You need the ability for them to log into Netflix. Like, they'll lose their mind if they don't have that. And then just making sure you're thinking of things, where we are, some of these cabins, they're not off grid, but some of them do have their own like septic and well, water and sewers, very different in some of the locations where I own. So you just got to be thinking about like, long-term maintenance for that and making sure you get, routine inspections. And then I guess you're furnishing them. So that's a big thing. And you're not just, a lot of these cabins are going to come turnkey. So when you buy them, they all already are coming with dishes and furniture and sometimes even the linens. But you want to be going through that and making sure that it's an experience that you would be comfortable staying in yourself. I see that a lot of times when I go in and evaluate, somebody's with a different property management company and their cabin is underperforming 9 times out of 10. It's going to be the property management company. They just want to get bodies in bed, so they're not maximizing the rental per night rate. But after that, it's usually just because the stuff inside the place is garbage. It could easily be spruced up, with just a few $1,000s just to replace maybe some older mattresses, or even do like if it's got drywall, a little bit of paint, or making sure the windows haven't lost their seal because you're looking out at the mountain view. Like I've walked into one recently and saw that. I'm like, this is such an easy fix. But those are some of the things you need to think about. It's way more hands-on, and you're going inside the place, like I said, 7 to 8 times a month, in between guests, to reposition for the next guest. So on that front, I'm writing a book right now about like this entire strategy. But one of the big things is like, people think, oh, there's so many people in and out of there, like it must just take so much damage. And it really doesn't, because they're only staying the night there. They're usually hiking or at Guy Fieri's new restaurant or something. So they're not, using everything the way like your normal tenant would, where you get the property back in 12 months and you're like, I got a carpet, I got a paint, I got a this, I got a that. You're cleaning it 7 to 8 times a month. So it's like a fun asset class to own. And sometimes I think maybe a catastrophic thing could, they could actually break something or whatever, but just like a hotel, we take security deposits off platform, and that's a real automated process for us. So if we need to hold back money or bill them for something they broke, we can. But it's quality of guests we get in the Smoky Mountains is pretty high, so we don't have to worry about that often.
No, I think it's a great point there. And, as you were talking, one of the things that I had to remember is that, you're talking about, your properties in the Smoky Mountains, which is, an area where short-term rentals are very common, right? Airbnbs, cabins is very common for people to come in and stay temporarily. Some of our listeners may be thinking about doing this in major cities or areas where maybe it's not as common for short-term rentals to be there, or it's a newer thing. Can you talk a little bit about kind of, the perspective of investing in areas where you're buying what already is a short-term rental and just kind of looking at that and figuring out how you make it better versus maybe in a market where you're buying a house and you're converting it into a short-term rental in maybe a larger city or somewhere else? What are some of those differences that investors need to keep in mind?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like anything that comes on the scene and then everybody kind of globs onto it, regulation starts to creep. So like I personally technically live in Nashville. I spend about half my time here and then half traveling or in the Smokies, but like I don't have any Airbnbs here or any kind of business here. I have friends that do, and it's really hard to get a license. So that could be a good and a bad thing. I've heard people talk on both sides of that as far as like once you get the license, you pretty much are good. You're golden. So that, there's less competition because it's harder to get. But then I think I'm like, what if they change the regulations? Like Smokies is, the industry there is all tourism, and unfortunately the area, there's a little bit of poverty there just because, it is a tourism industry. So we try to pay really well the vendors that we use and shop really local for that reason. But I think that's one part of your question. And then the second part would be like, I've done like some of the BRRRR strategy. Like I bought a cabin in Townsend that was just they were living there, beautiful cabin on the golf course. But once they moved out and it was empty, I was like, so I did like a complete gut job on it. And that took a lot more money and a lot more time. I think short-term rentals in my mind, I want it to be more of like a cash flow plug and play business. So I want to buy something, now I'm buying something extremely turnkey. I don't want to have to put a lot of money into it. I would rather put some strategy around like theming. Like I just bought one and gave it like a whiskey barrel theme. So it's like decked out to the nines and people are immersed in this like feeling when they're there. So it's, trying to differentiate and offset some saturation, but just now I'm all over the place answering your question, but just those are some of the things that come to mind when I think about like metro versus, Smokies and turnkey versus not. They're completely different strategies within the same asset class.
Yeah, but I think it's very helpful to understand, right? The first thing you mentioned was regulations. Is this a market where it's built for tourism? They're encouraging travel, they're encouraging Airbnbs and short-term rentals, or is this a metropolitan area where maybe they see this as a threat because it's taking units offline? We have an affordability issue in this country. So, maybe there's going to be some regulatory challenges that you either have to anticipate, whether they're there today or not. Maybe they change and it's going to get worse in the future. So I think that's one important thing to keep in mind. Is this a market where they're encouraging tourism and short-term rentals, or is this a market where they're going to see that as a challenge? And then second, if you're buying a property that is already, a short-term rental, you can look at some of the operations and what they're currently doing, and then come with your business plan of what you might adjust. And then conversely, you can look at something where it might be a house and then say, okay, I'm going to convert this to a short-term rental. What do I need to do? Do I need to go in there and, fully rehab it? I need to furnish it. I want to go with a theme. And I think that's really cool too, because, it gets into this experience. And when we talk about vacations, it really is an experience for someone. And there's plenty of cabins that I'm sure people can look at. But if you've got something that stands out and is unique, that's going to make people more likely to choose your cabin than the one that looks like every other one that's available on the website. So another great insight just to help people understand, like, if you're going to go down this pathway, how do you stand out? How do you build the right team? How do you find the right property? And then making sure you're running your numbers the right way. One of the things that you're focused on is also helping other women in particular, become millionaires through real estate investing. Why is this important to you?
Yeah. Since I was a little girl, I was always the one, in the classroom that was helping the kid that was getting picked on. That just is a soft spot in my heart I guess I have a father that's a like grandmaster in the martial arts. He's a sensei, and he instilled just a lot of self-confidence in me and just made me like a really strong woman from a young age. And I just always wanted to like lift others up through that because I could just see like the hurt in people. And that just kind of angers me. I went to a women's conference in Charlotte this year, and there was a statistic that another woman gave that was like only 31% of all investors are women. And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, well then when you take that other statistic that says 90% of all millionaires are created out of real estate, that's pretty messed up. So what can I do? And I just, I don't have like I didn't have a good why of why I was doing all this. It's fun. I enjoy it. I like to travel. So it kind of fills that niche. And just, I always loved Monopoly and real estate. So it was kind of fun, and I was making good money, and I was able to quit my job. But I'm talking to my mother. She's like, what, why are you doing this? How many, you got to have 1,000 cabins? Like, where do you stop? Where's your stopping point? What are you doing? And so I think just through, the strength of my parents and just my like, core values inside me kind of led me to that. And then I just came up with that 1,000 women millionaires, because that would be $1 billion in net worth. And that sounds awesome. So let's do it.
I love it. I love it. And Leslie,
Yeah.
we were kind of talking before we hit record. I'm a big fan of representation. I think representation does matter. And it's really important for people to see people who look like them, who live in the cities they live in, who have the same challenges, whether you are, in corporate America and you're trying to figure out how to make that transition out of your W-2 into, real estate, or more of a, lifestyle that you create. Whether you are, a minority, whether you're, woman, whatever it is, it's important to see other people who can identify with your journey, or you can identify with their journey. And I think it's really important to understand that, which is why I love the mission you have. And you're right there. We always have to make sure we're finding ways to tell those stories and share those journeys, because some of these challenges are a little bit different. Just real quick on that note, what are some of those challenges? You talked about 31% of, investors are women. When you think about that, why do you think that number isn't higher? What are the, some challenges that you think women face that maybe we can all kind of work on to help address a little bit?
Yeah. I was on a big strategy team when I had like almost a 20-year banking career with US Bank, and they have a big women's movement. So I was on like a strategy team, like it was part of their DEI movement, but also like they had they did like a ton of stuff with women. And there was a training that a woman had done about like imposter syndrome that women have. And I think that's just something about the way that we are wired as women. We're not all like that, obviously, but you always think like, oh, I probably couldn't do that because like I don't have, women are like, I don't know, there's just this crazy mindset around like we don't apply for jobs if like we don't fit all the requirements of like the type of experience you need to have and the amount of years in that industry you need to have. So like we just won't apply for it where a man would. And I think it's just, we not that we want to be perfect, but we want to present our best selves and not let people down. And so it surfaces in like an imposter syndrome type of situation where, and I will still, occasionally even be like, am I doing this right? Should I not buy this? Should I not buy that? And, did I make a bad choice? It's like, there's no bad choices. There's just a lesson that you're going to learn out of it if it didn't turn out the way that you hoped. And so I think lifting others up and making them aware, like, failure is an option, and sometimes it's not bad. It pivots you to like where you were supposed to head. So, I don't know why we are wired that way. It probably goes back to caveman days or something, but, and then to your point, like, I think not seeing somebody that looks like you in the room. There's a book written by some women that I know called The Only Woman in the Room. And it's about their real estate journey, where every time they went to like a networking thing, it was just like a bunch of men and one woman. And just trying to change that and make them know this is not like a men's club. Like you can join us. We're all here doing it.
Well, and I think too, like the great thing is, we have platforms like this, right? We got a podcast that we can share. We can make things more accessible. There's, websites and social media groups, and, whether it be on Facebook or Bigger Pockets. But there are ways to try to encourage that a little bit more. And I think it's really important to see people who look like you. And like you said, whether it's imposter syndrome, and you kind of need to just address it directly, right? It's like, okay, what are you concerned with? Well, hey, here's somebody who did it and they were in the same situation, and here's how they overcame it, or here's what they did to, make something happen. And then that fear of failure, I think, is real too, because I think when you are in a position of, when you're a minority, or, you're someone who feels like you have to, work a little bit harder or do things, just you got to put in a little bit more effort because you don't want to give people a reason to tell you no, or for something to fail. You do have a bit of a higher expectation of yourself, and maybe you're not willing to take that risk until you feel a little bit more comfortable and you have a little bit more, experience that you can rely on. And that may not be true for other people. They just get a great idea and they just start running. And I think some other groups don't really see it that way. And they feel like, well, hey, I gotta I got to check all the boxes that they tell me to check, and then I can, take that risk. So I do think it's important to understand that, but also to demystify it a little bit so people can take the action they need to see the results they want to get in their life. Leslie, you gave me some great insights. I want to make sure people know how to connect with you. First of all, your website, Leslie Ann Morris, that's Ann with an E, leslieannmorris.com is your website. And then also you're very active on Instagram. So if they want to follow and connect with you there, it's at leslie.ann.morris. Check out Leslie if you're interested in investing with her or learning more about how you can get involved. That's a way to connect and engage with her. We're going to move on to a round of insights. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. Give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
I guess the most recent example is in this heyday of short-term rentals that we had, I started investing in other markets that weren't the Smoky Mountains. In particular, I bought a condo in Panama City Beach because I just felt, the prices were increasing in the Smokies. And so why not? I'm just having so much success over here. Let's try it. And it made money. It didn't fail, but the quality of the guests down there, it's a party, party city. They were really hard on the unit and like way more hand holding. And then, I had a whole new vendor team out of state that I wasn't really, I just jumped into this new market. So I would say that I was able to actually sell that just a couple of months ago for a gain and did a 1031 into the Whiskey Whispers cabin, which has been an overnight success. So I would say that's probably the biggest one. There's case studies about this cabin on Instagram in my story highlights. If folks are interested in kind of seeing the journey of that cabin, I'll be sharing more pretty soon on it as well. I would say that's probably the most recent one, but there's so many little things, I just pivot really quickly. I think that's just one of my traits that lends itself to success for me.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
A digital or mobile resource for this, I would probably go with BiggerPockets. Just because it's so easy, you can add, it's not an app, but like you can add it, as like a shortcut to your smartphone screen or whatever to get on there. You can do real quick searches in the forums. I have my blog is almost 100% there. I have it in a couple other spots, but it's mostly just on BiggerPockets. Just quick, short reads, things that'll motivate you to start thinking, strategy when you're headed into this asset class. And that's probably the biggest one.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Definitely Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I know that's just what everybody recommends, but it's so good. It immediately unlocks everybody's brain, especially those that are skeptical on real estate. They become way more open-minded.
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Definitely what I call like external mind dump. So like as soon as I'm thinking of something that I need to do or somebody I need to call, I have spots, whether it's calendar or tasks in your phone, I have like a spot where I'll put all that. And then, the next day or, a few times a day, I'm going back to look at that. It's like a very active to-do list.
There you go. All right. Give me your number one insight for short-term rental investing.
The number one insight. Oh, wow. I don't know. I mean, for me, it's so fun to do. And you also have a property where you can stay. So because I do technically live in Nashville, when I'm over there, I'm staying at a different cool cabin every time or someone else's cabin if mine are rented. So I guess the insight would be just like, it's not just like a passive asset class, but it's a fun thing to own as well.
All right, let's lighten the mood. You are in Nashville. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Oh gosh, I just bought this place. I haven't been here that long. I live above the Conrad, so I'm gonna have to say Hall's Chop House.
All right.
An establishment out of Charleston, South Carolina. They just opened a restaurant here. They're opening a second one soon, and they have just like the best prime rib you can imagine.
There you go. We'll make sure we put that one on the list. Listen, Leslie, you gave us a lot of great insight. I appreciate you hearing your story on being in banking for 20 years, making the transition, buying that first, short-term rental property, building up that portfolio, and then making some mistakes, buying some stuff in different markets or realizing, hey, this is why this worked. Let's make some adjustments. And I think it's really important for people to understand that you will make mistakes. You don't want them to be catastrophic mistakes, but it's okay to make some mistakes and learn and grow. And that's just part of the process. But also talking about why representation matters and why your goal is to help more women get into real estate so that they can get the same benefits, or so they can get the same benefits that you've been receiving. Again, for anybody who wants to connect with you, your website is leslieannmorris.com and your IG is leslie.ann.morris. So make sure you check out Leslie there. I want to thank you again for coming on the show, and we hope you have a good one. Take care.